Welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in to Circling Dialogos and this ongoing series called Dialectic into Dialogos. So first, some announcements. So the thing that's coming up the soonest is a circling weekend called The Explorer, and that's June 18th and 19th from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's on Zoom, and the Explorer stage is the second stage of circling, and you don't need to take them in orders, so everybody's welcome. And specifically, this is an intensive introduction to circling, and specifically that part of circling which is about a profound, deep listening, what the Greeks would call hearkening. So if you're interested in circling and you want to get a taste of what circling is, I would say the weekends are probably the best way to do that. And so information, cost, links, all that stuff is below in the show notes. That's July 9th and 10th. June 18th and 19th. What's happening on July 9th and 10th, I'm excited to announce, is the third time we are doing the Circling and Dialogos course, taught by myself, Christopher, and John Vervaeke. I'm so stoked about this work and what it represents and what it invites everyone to participate in. I can barely contain myself. And so please come register. There's a early bird discount up until 2 weeks before the course starts. It's July 9th and 10th. Again, it's on Zoom. It starts at 10 a.m. and goes until 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also, I am taking clients. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, email me. My email address is below in the show notes. And we also have, the Circling Institute has drop-in events, and that's every Thursday from 6 p.m. until 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this deep dive into Dialogos. But so Skole, I want to just represent talking about Skole. Well, a couple of things, just because we've been having a conversation to ourselves, and I just pressed record button just to catch people up. So we were talking about, I was asking Daniel how he's doing. He's like, it's hot where he's at, and it used to only be hot like 5 days a year, and now it's hot like 30 days a year. And I just been talking with somebody about working with a group of executives, right, and facilitating them working on global warming. And we've been in that conversation. And so Daniel was talking about 18 minutes, 10 seconds per mile. I'm sorry, my wrist just spontaneously talking to me. Oh, I forgot to shut that off. But and they were talking about, like, really in this kind of this something like global warming is so complex, right? And that really not many people know, or there's arguments about what to do, right? And how we're going to face this and all of that. And Daniel was talking about, was mentioning that, these kinds of discussions, it's really what we're doing is, in some sense, talk about faith, right? Is what it's going to take, in some sense, is stepping into stepping into a place from which you don't know where it's going to go, but no one's been there before, but still stepping there, right? And having this kind of letting go, and that space. One way to talk about that space is actually a way of being in time, right? That the Greeks called skole. Like Aristotle said, he says all mathematics and philosophy should happen in skole. And Socrates said it at his deathbed. He said, I think Athens shouldn't kill me. They should just pay me. They should pay me lots of money just to spend time in skole. And the simple way of putting skole, it's like basically relating to the moment as an end in itself, right? It's a time where you're no longer doing things in order to do something else, right? You're doing something because it's like you could say it's a way of being in time, such that time is impregnated with immense possibility. And there's in skole has to do with holding, right? So when you're in skole, my understanding of this is like the way that you relate to time, right, is in such a way that time in turn holds you, right? So there's this holding relationship to time, right? And it's in skole, and it's in conversations in skole, and it's in activity in skole, that something truly can be decided.
Yeah, so that paper from Ivo De Gennaro that I was mentioning goes to the Theaetetus from Plato. And in that there's a digression, and Ivo's argument is they're like, there's on the court and they're the judges, and they break up time. And through breaking up time, the sophists are called into their element. So because now it's more about winning arguments, convincing people in the shortest possible way. And then that is contrasted to how knowledge, episteme, is comes to fruition in skole. And that true freedom of inquiry, let's say academic or scientific freedom, can only come about in skole and never in ars scholia. And that all started, so say, when people, when clock time or like these sand clocks kind of like were used, where we just count time, so to say, and we use operative notions of time, and we forget about this ontological notion, this holding to what holds or has us in the first place, which is more. So this co-holding in skole between, perhaps we could say, self and the world, the human being, and the source or the origin of sense and meaning. That's all at stake in that question and that issue of skole. And in order to now come back to the present, I think, and that's why I was also so attracted to what you or John are doing, in order to, I think, face those hyper objects that are always beyond our own capacity of sense making. We need places of skole where we can take a lot of time to go into these issues and to have a scholeic information ecology where a truth can be generated, because otherwise truth is denied. That's basically Ivo's argument. Truth is denied if we're just in a structure that is in ars scholia. truth and sense just don't show up. I mean, he's very radical in this. He really says we have no time. It's not just we have less time. We don't have time. We have no time at all if we are in ascolia. So it's not about having less time or little time, but really either having time, having an access to time, or having no access to time. And he's quite radical in this, that he thinks we don't even have most of the time in this world. We don't have any access to ontological time.
Yeah, totally. And there's so many implications in this, right? Of all the way down to what is the human being, right? To be in Skole is not the same thing as being a modern subject, right? Like the modern subject, it's like, so Skole is translated in most commonly into leisure. And leisure is like core to the notion of economics, right? We work so that we can have leisure, right? But because it sees it's a very shallow notion, right, of it, because it's just basically leisure becomes just simply a time where you're no longer working. It's like it's defined by its absence of work, and therefore most of our leisure time is lots of escapism, right? Lots of right, lots of kind of partying or whatever it is, right? Where Skole has to do with coming into the dimension of time itself, right? Biding in time itself, and that whatever's going on in Skole has to do with all time, right? And this notion has been, and so in other words, being in Skole means that it's a whole different presupposition of what you are, what a human is, what a person is, right? We're not workers that are useful and that are approaching the world such that we can calculate it and use it and become effective, right? It's more like a person is in the world is something like pregnant with meaning, right? And in some sense, in Skole is something where we can begin to midwife or give birth to the meaning implicit in the world. It's a completely different occurring, right? It's a completely different way life shows up and occurs. And that notion, I notice it in a very practical way. I think about Skole all the time, and I'm constantly noticing all of my habituations of having to be productive or right, all these kinds of things. But noticing that and making these choices of, like, I spent 4 or 5 hours yesterday just reading and thinking about Eckhart. Now, if I ask myself, was that useful? Like, in no direct way, right? In no direct way, in no way that I'm going to, anyone's going to pay me for or something like that. Was it meaningful? It's deeply meaningful. And here's the thing is John just had an interview with I forget his name, but he had wrote a book about something about education and how we see ourselves as people, and the shift to becoming workers to actually being persons, right? And what education was when we saw ourselves as persons, which education itself had nothing to do with practicality, had everything to do with the depth and being genuinely educated. And he used an example of when in architecture, it says whenever a building is built for functionality, it doesn't last long. It's outdated really, really quickly. But buildings that are built for beauty are reused over and over and over again in multiple contexts throughout history, right? So in some way, when you focus on the beautiful, let's say, right, and you respond to life in that way, it ends up actually being more useful than if utility is your aim, right? It ends up being more useful in ways that you can't even comprehend, right? So in some strange way, I think it's funny. I'm thinking about what that takes for me. Talking about faith is when I think about what it has, now that I think about it, for me to make more choices, right, that are about meaning, like spending more time in Scholé, and letting go of whatever neurotic other thing I would do, right, is a kind of faith, right? It takes a certain kind of faith, and because there's that battle that goes on, and what side I end up on has everything to do with faith.
Mm-hmm. Is there, John, or here I called you John again. I always conflate you with John Vervaeke. Guy, is there a sense with you of, I don't get the feeling that you choose that you consciously choose, like as an experiment or something, to stay more in Scholé. It feels more like you're drawn to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth of it is, it's like I'd end up doing that anyways, because I couldn't not, right? I would just be more conflicted about it, right?
Yeah.
But having this distinction Scholé, and really kind of grokking it and getting close to its meaning, right, as a principle, if you will, really has afforded me. I would have to say, I'm glad you said that. It's afforded me to be more purely in Scholé, right? Yeah.
Without without sort of sort of negotiating your time spent here. I'll give myself 4 hours of this if I am then productive someplace else. There's none of that.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
That with Scholé is also so interesting, because you were talking about what we think a human being is, and right, I'm sure you know this. The classical definition is zoon, logon, echon. So the animal that holds, so echein means to hold, and this is the same holding that's in Scholé. So that's very cool. I think that both Scholé and that zoon, logon, echon both have that echein, that holding or having. So the animal that holds him or herself in a nearness to logos, or holds logos. So that is what Ivo would call this native endowment to the principle, to the source of sense, which is the one, the hen, or the logos, or whatever. So in Scholé, we also have this nearness to the principle, then in the nearness to logos. And otherwise, we would be denied. We kind of like, we turn the principle on its head, so to say. We deny the principle. We deny that nearness. And that's why for Aristotle, that other dimension was also, in a sense, necessary, because there are contingencies that we have to face as human beings. People die, people get sick, people have accidents, all sorts of things can happen that have nothing to do with Scholé. But what for Aristotle, the main concern was that in the middle of the pole there needs to be Scholé. Yeah. Otherwise, we fall into senselessness. We need something in the heart, in the center of the polis. We need skole.
We have a version of professional wrestling at the polis.
Yeah.
But I that is really Guy, what you said, that we choose. This is something that this seems to be so modern idea that we choose.
Yeah.
Oh, today I'm gonna going to work. I'm having some leisure time today. While I think when you're really in the source, standing or holding yourself in the source of sense, I think you're just drawn to it, and because what Ivo always makes clear or argues for is that when we are in this relationship, first of all, we also we come into relationship with ourselves, and also it's the highest form of freedom. And when we come in touch with genuinely with freedom, then I think we don't want to let go of that. Then I think it doesn't become optional to prefer something else above that highest form of freedom. So skole is the countenance that makes us free.
What the countenance? What does countenance mean?
A kind of a way of behaving in the world, a way of holding, a way of being in the world.
Yeah.
Way of presenting yourself.
Yeah. Kind of like comporting. Yeah. Interesting.
I'm not sure if faith is. I don't know what the kind of like the attunement to that element is. I'm not sure if it's faith.
Yeah. Well, it's in this sense. Well, it's in this sense that like it's not. It's a knowing, but it's not knowing. It's not knowing what's going to happen, or it's not my bets, right? It's not like it's in some sense having faith in a principle, right? And
also there's a strong element of communitas in it as well.
But you're right though. It does. But this is where it's interesting though. It speaks to you, and you're already in relationship with it. You don't come into relationship with it. You find yourself right in the comportment with it, already underway. So in that sense, it's not like a leap of faith in it. The faith is more like the whatever it is, my participation in the way that I'm really glad that you that's a great thing you picked up on, Sandra, because it's not like it's not me choosing one or the other or something. No, it's like understanding skole and getting close to that affords me to do what I'm already want to do anyways, right? In some sense, but it just affords me to be less conflicted about it, right? In this way, but there's this sense of that I'm available to be in relationship with something that isn't contingent, right? Feels in the ballpark of faith that I'm open to find myself in that relation, that openness and that finding seems to have something to do with faith.
What you sent us a few days ago, Guy, and I don't know who this is sermon 1. What's it from?
Eckhart.
Okay, so it says, I'll read a part of it.
Yeah, this is just. I've been sitting with this all week.
This is exactly what he's talking about. I'll just pick up this part. This unknown knowing keeps the soul constant and yet spurs her on to pursuit. And then he continues, about this the wise man said, In the middle of the night, when all things were in a quiet silence, there is spoken to me a hidden word. It came like a thief. There was spoken to me a hidden word. It came like a thief by stealth. Why does he call it a word when it was hidden? The nature of a word is to reveal what is hidden. It revealed itself to me and shone forth before me, declaring something to me and making God known to me. And therefore, it is called a word.
Can you read that just one more time?
This unknown knowing keeps the soul constant and yet spurs her on to pursuit. About this, the wise man said, in the middle of the night, when all things were in a quiet silence, there was spoken to me a hidden word. It came like a thief by stealth. Why does he call it a word when it was hidden? The nature of a word is to reveal what is hidden. It revealed itself to me and shone forth before me, declaring something to me and making God known to me. And therefore, it is called a word.
What do you what do you hear in that?
Me?
Yeah.
The word reveals what is hidden. And as you were talking about, people coming into Scholé and in the sense of not knowing and overwhelming complexity, and what you were saying about the man who was the farmer, overwhelming complexity and overwhelming not knowing.
Yeah.
And then something is revealed through the word, and the word comes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It's only after the word comes, only after that.
Yes.
Total not knowing, that total, complete aporia.
Yes. Yes.
Then the word comes.
Yes.
And what has been hidden is revealed.
Yes. Yes.
So it makes me think, I was talking a few sessions ago about apocalypse. The real meaning of that is revelation.
Mm.
And it's, possibly only through the word can we know the revelation. I don't know, I mean,
if you can you go back before that and read?
Yeah.
There's a paragraph before that.
Yeah.
Like a little paragraph before that one.
Yeah, that's right.
With that, and then read through that, because there's something crucial in there.
So yeah, there's a part that I'm not able to get. Something about you have to soar above yourself and all your powers, above ratiocination and reasoning, above works, above all modes in existence, into the secret still darkness, that you may come to the knowledge of the unknown super divine God. There must be a withdrawal from all things. God scorns to work through images. Now you might say, what does God do without images in the ground and essence? That I cannot know, because my soul powers receive only in images. They have to know and lay hold of each thing in its appropriate image. They cannot recognize a horse when presented with the image of a man. And since all things enter from without, that knowledge is hidden from my soul, which is to her great advantage. This not knowing makes her wonder and leads her to eager pursuit. for she perceives clearly that it is, but does not know how or what it is.
Can you go back and read that one sentence again, just a little bit slower?
This not knowing makes her wonder and leads her to eager pursuit, for she perceives clearly that it is, but does not know how or what it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
That to me is so powerful, right? Like this sense of there's something that just echoes and tickles some deep place underneath, that's like, yes, she knows that.
Yeah.
It is.
But
doesn't know what or how.
Mm-hmm.
And that in the not knowing what or how, right, affords, because if you know what or how, the moment you know what and how, you move on to the next thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The peculiar disposition that the human being is in,
Mm-hmm.
right, is it finds itself and its world already there. The that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But none of its thatness can reveal its whatness, right? Or its howness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no amount of knowing what or knowing how will disclose or reveal the that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that not knowing that becomes a knowing, right? And this is where it's like people I think interpret, in some senses probably rightly with Eckhart as apophatic, right? But I think this is beyond apophatic. This is something different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
this is a not knowing,
yeah,
right? With a hyphen there.
mm-hmm.
And that not knowing is what evokes wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that wonder, and this is what I got from when we were talking about Daniel, of how his wonder seems to, when we were acknowledging his wonder, how it seems like, yeah, it just has him already participating, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I, in this echo sense of like, God, it's like something like this. For me, it's something like this. It's like all my life. It's like, can you hear it? There's this sound. I feel, yeah, it's like, do you hear that?
Yeah.
Fact, all my best friends throughout my life is something like, I've gone over and I've gone, do you hear that sound too? And they were like, yeah, that sound, you hear that too? Like this soundless sound in the background that's constant, right? And that's the wonder,
Yeah.
right? And that's the very wonder that it's weird, because on some level, it's like what it shines forth is withdrawn, right?
Yeah.
That's what's interesting about this secret word, right? Whispered stealthily, right? It's spoken. You know that it's been spoken. You didn't hear it because
Mm-hmm.
it's whispered,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know what it means, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so what shines forth is hiddenness
Mm-hmm.
itself, right? And that fundamental relationship, right, is he would say is in the soul, is where God gives birth in the soul, is in that relation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that certainly doesn't sound apophatic to me either.
No.
There's no way that that could devolve into this sort of nihilism that certainly I have experienced in practice, Buddhist practice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. What do you think of all this, Daniel?
It's great. In some lecture, I once heard that the person who lectured said, Eckhart said we never see God or so, but sometimes we can hear him gulp or so, or like clear his throat.
Oh, that's cute.
And
Yeah.
there's something like that. That's what Eckhart said. So that I thought that was really cool.
And the thing is that because it's always receding at the same time as it's coming forth, it draws you. It draws you. Draws you.
This is precisely, I think, what Heidegger, because Heidegger, really one of the key things for Heidegger was always this withdrawal.
Yeah.
Which, however, gives way to clearing or that this relationship between concealment and unconcealment, or clearing and withdrawing. And so we do not, and that's easily that we could fall into the trap of nihilism if we just conflate that abscondedness.
Yeah.
That was also for a long time in our tradition a trait of God. The Deus absconditus, the hidden God, that we do not conflate that with a kind of nihilistic void or sheer negativity, but just that's actually where we could discover the fullness. If again we have that either, first of all, we acknowledge thatness, that this is really there. Although we do not what or how it is, but it's there. It's we have to affirm thatness, and then we also that our soul has a kind of disposition in knowing, in unknown knowing or learned ignorance. So we keep following that. We do not lose sight of it, but we keep minding it. We keep trying to holding on to it. And then we are in a relation. Then I think we are again in something like Scholé, because then we hold ourselves to something that or nothing that holds us.
It's our primal relationship. Really.
And Eckhart, I think, is very good, perhaps one of the best people in our tradition to describe that.
He's like he's on one level, he's like more ancient than his time, and another level, he's like still in the future.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing in that one book that you point that you I think that you have, Daniel, about Gelassenheit, the Heidegger book about his relationship with Eckhart and Heidegger. We just lost it. Where'd it go? That's so appropriate. That's so appropriate.
What's the book?
I think you got it right up there.
It's
really good. It's really well written. Yeah.
Oh.
Did you read it, Guy?
Yeah. I've read it like 3 or 4 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just something about there's something about Eckhart and Heidegger's like lifelong affinity with Eckhart that is just something. There's something there that just it feels like just keep looking there, right? I now realize I don't choose to look there.
Yeah, right? That's right.
So I'm noticing something in this conversation. Like how I'm experiencing is it's like something's gathering that seems really, really interesting. Like there's a certain kind of like, I feel like that it's some kind of something's drawing me in or pulling me forward.
Yeah, I've noticed something. I was going to say something too. There's something happening here in our conversation. And it feels to me, it feels like this is really how how faith enacts itself in us, that somehow, like, it's not that it's such a travesty to think of faith as shared beliefs. That's such a travesty to me. It's anything but. It's shared, but it doesn't have anything to do with belief system, or it's a shared moving kind of something.
Is what you're saying is like, you're noticing in this conversation is that we're sharing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That as a result of whatever it is that we're sharing, there's something else that's appearing to me.
Yeah.
Can't quite put my finger on it, but there's something there.
I make a proposal.
Make a proposal, please.
We still say faith, and I think we have an inkling, like a feeling what it is. But if we just, again, what you just said, Sandra, if we just think of faith as kind of propositional knowledge, then we don't get anywhere. So, and my feeling is that participatory faith,
yes,
is something like that religio, as Nishitani understood it, as the self-realization of reality. And that participation. Say that last
part again. Say the last.
So religion, according Nishitani, defined religion as the real self-realization of reality, similar to by John's idea of relevance realization. He got that from Nishitani. He said that a couple of times in his interviews. So participatory faith is perhaps something like that real self-realization of reality, because it comports us to reality, and in that sense we really again that real is very important for Nishitani. We really believe that reality also realizes us, and we really realize reality, and that's a deep participation that cannot be drowned out by any propositional claims, but can only be experienced and lived and participated with. And I think that's why it's kind of like, I think, Sandra, you said something. It's in between all of us, because it at once binds us to this principle, to reality and the world, but it also binds us all to ourselves. And then we get this great intimacy, both between ourselves, but also to the world, and to reality as such.
So as you were just doing this, and then you linked it to the relationship to ourselves, right? And it's linking to it, and then to the world and to reality. I felt like like with every word that you said, I was like, check, 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 check in this moment. And what you're saying, because just to get the proposal that you're saying is, you're saying that if we're going to call what may be happening right now faith, that we want to distinguish it from propositional faith, right? In some kind of core belief that's not going to get anywhere, but rather it's a dynamical faith, right? And the dynamical faith has to do with the, as you said, quoting Nishitani, the self. It's the, what is it? The self-realization.
The real self-realization.
The real. Okay, that's an important part.
Yeah.
The real self-realization of reality.
Reality.
And the last part, isn't the last part for its own sake?
That's not in the book, but John added that sometimes. And I would say that's I think in Nishitani's spirit, if we add that.
Yeah, that seems important, because that's also hints at the skole, that acknowledges that the skole that this can happen in a relation of scole, right? This real self-realization of reality, right? And so what you're saying is faith, what you're proposing is that if what's happening right now, what's drawing us all in, what's comporting us, right, is faith. It's a dynamical faith. And it has to do with the self-realization, the real self-realization of reality. And Johnny V would add, for its own sake.
And I would add, for its own sake, because it feels to me like there are three of us gathered together here, but there's something else that is appearing itself for its own sake. And in a sense, it has gathered us. That I have that sort of feeling about it, for its own sake.
Yeah.
How about Daniel? How about you?
So sorry, I just want to say that when we stress that for its own sake, we get very close to Heidegger's owning. The eigenes, like this central term for the later Heidegger. Where this own comes in, is an owning, then I think we could also talk in that language with an owning. We really come into our own with the owning.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps similar to the real self-realization of reality.
Oh, that's that feeling.
That's interesting, isn't it?
So,
yeah, because
just going back here with Daniel, let's do the practice.
Okay.
I'm being the listener. So I just heard something else there, is that when we say for its own sake, right, this dynamical faith for its own sake, right? Well, one, it's a dynamical participatory faith is what you said, right? And that it's actually for its own sake gets us very close to arrivedness, or this sense of an owning, our own most, right? Is that it?
Yeah. Let me get my religion and nothingness, because
I'm not going to let you.
Nishitani,
you can do it, but you're not let do it.
he actually says that I mean, he says it follows that realization in its sense of appropriation. And think about the other translation for eigenes is event of appropriation. So we could also say owning. It's also fine.
Yes.
Fine in talking about this. So it follows that realization in its sense of appropriation differs from philosophical cognition, which again would be just a propositional faith. What I'm speaking of is not theoretical knowledge, but a real appropriation, a real owning. And here says the proprium, taken here to embrace the whole man, mind, and body. So owning, appropriating man, mind, and body, your whole being. This real appropriation provides our very mode of being with its essential determination. So what we really are for our own sake. The real perception of reality is our real mode of being itself, and constitutes the realness that is the true reality of our existence. This perception of reality can constitute the realness of our existence because it comes into being in unison with the self-realization of reality itself. In this sense, the realness of our existence as the appropriation of reality belongs to reality itself as the self-realization of reality itself. In other words, the self-realization of reality can only take place by causing our existence to become truly real.
Daniel, is what you're saying is the thing that we caught sight of, that I brought up, Sandra, and you confirmed this thing happening in the dialogue, right? Is it fair to say that this is what we're coming close to is reality realizing itself?
Or the maybe also speaking with Heidegger, the owning itself,
Yes, the owning.
or eyeing itself. This is important, right? This is in Ivo de Genao as well. An owning also has this trait of an eyeing. That's why we catch sight of it.
Yes.
Yes, this is this very strange way of seeing the owning itself.
Yes. You catch sight of it, but it's a sight that doesn't just lay out for you what it is. It's like,
no.
And this is what kind of, this is what coming back to the Eckhart, right?
It lays out that, it shows that, but it doesn't show what or how.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like I overheard, right? Or caught sight or caught a glimpse of this turning own most.
Yeah. But when you try to box it up, it's gone.
Yeah.
And, but it's still here.
Yeah.
But it
yeah. So this is where it's like, well, actually, Daniel, anything else about that proposition?
Not for now. Not for now. I just scribbled down what I've just said 5 minutes ago, so in my book, so I don't forget it.
Could you write down can you write down the scribble or share the scribble?
No, just that okay, the proposition was that participatory faith is something like reality or catching sight and holding on to reality realizing itself, or the owning itself. That we do not let we leap towards that in some strange way. We find ourselves in that, but then there needs to be some effort from the human being to keep holding on to that participation.
Could I ask you right now, is that what you're doing right now in this moment?
I think not just in this moment, but in like the last, I don't know how long we were speaking, but we were kind of gradually finding ourselves, our way into this element. And then until now, we kind of just participating in it, in its fullness. So, I think in that sense, we could say, we could strengthen the proposition and say, we are actually enacting that kind of participatory faith that I wanted to express.
Yes. So
it's not just about philosophical cognition, but it's really about this enacting, participating with reality itself.
Yeah.
For our own sake and for reality's own sake.
Yeah.
Which are the same.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to go into appreciation. So, well, one, I'm appreciating that the finding what was actually we were in the midst of, so that the proposition, the act of proposing, right, was abiding to the act of proposing was abiding to in presencing what was actually happening, right? And whenever what we're like, that realization of when what we're talking about is this realization is what's doing the talking, those are just Those moments just glow to me. And so I just appreciate that glow. Also appreciating the sense of reality, right? But not the sense of like, it's not like it's fully disclosed. It's what I heard you say is it's disclosed in our comportment. We found ourselves comported to it. And then when we saw it, we wanted to we wanted to hold on to it. We wanted to come into relationship with it. And that's what we're doing right now. And so you're distinguishing that's what we're doing right now. And what I'm doing is I'm appreciating it with my hands. I anticipate taking this forward. I anticipate that there's that whatever it is that hears the whisper of the word, right? That the secret word, the whispering of the secret word, whatever it is that listens to that, I anticipate that listening is going to be growing in all of us in this dialogue, and maybe for the rest of our lives, as a constant track, right? Going along everything else that we're doing, that will deepen of this, like as if like that way that you can, something in you is always listening for the sound of your own name. You're in a crowded room or a crowded thing, and somebody, just a whisper, guysengstock. It's like all the animals hush, right? It's like as if it's been listening to it the whole time. I get that sense about this gathering and owning thing that's going on. Like that's a sense of anticipation. What's mysterious to me about this is precisely, it's mysterious to me is because what we caught sight of, what we overheard happening in the dialogue wasn't we noticed it. We didn't know it, right? We noticed it. And there's something mysterious to me about that noticing. It's like, yeah, and if that's something like knowing that without knowing what or how. So what I want to say now, right, is faith is a participatory, dynamical relation to reality that I want to say there's something about intimacy here. Like, it's incredibly intimate to find yourself already inside of something, right? And then the turn towards it, the turning towards it and noticing, there's the noticing it and then the pointing to it, and then having the proper relationship to it. Like Sandra, you talked about, like, we can't grab onto it because that's turning it into a what or a how, right? So there is some sense of the right way to relate with it. So there's something I want to say, that there's something here I want to add about intimacy. And perhaps it's like, we'll say it's a faith is a finding is defining, is is defining what is far most close to your heart. You're finding what is most far, most near. And then not irritably grasping for it, right? But faith is the, it's releasing myself to it. Yes, releasing myself to what cannot be shown in propositions, right? There's a releasement toward it. And this has to do with an intimacy with it. But like the intimacy seems like has to do with letting it be unknown, right? There's this letting. Yeah, I just heard it right there.
Yeah.
There's letting be unknown and letting it be it. Yet that letting me draws me closer to it, but it's not like knowing more about it. That's it.
The word that keeps coming up for me is true communion.
Yeah.
There is, as you're talking about letting yourself being drawn towards it, but not knowing and never knowing that there will never be a knowing. Yeah. So it's in proper relationship to it.
Yeah.
But the intimacy is the intimacy of true communion that is already here, already, always here.
Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't need anything except. Yeah. It doesn't need anything.
Yeah.
It's already here.
Right.
But it is participatory and dynamical.
Yeah.
That's how the true communion is.
Yeah. And there's that part, and there's that kind of the proper relationship draws me into some kind of threshold with it. And it's in that threshold, right, where it starts to really matter how I comport myself.
Right. Yeah.
That's where I hit some kind of aporia, right? It's like it feels like if this was a personal relationship, it's like I just said the thing that risks it all, right? And then there's that moment of like I've just let go, right? And it really matters how I relate to however it comes back, but I've already released myself to it. I'm like at some I'm like the other side of a threshold, right?
Yeah.
And there's something, so as I feel that, I feel the transformational possibilities of that, right? Of like, whatever happens at this point, it's let go, but I'm closer. It's intimate. I just want to kind of sit in for a moment. I think I'm complete.
I also want to do an appreciation. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
As I experienced it, we were doing our investigation, like participating in their dialogue and so on. And when Guy, you said, "Is that what we're doing right now?" When that finger was pointed to right now, like when I'm in dialogue, there's stuff happening that's out there and going, and all this thoughts and words and expression and everything, but right now, what's happening here, that moment of pointing that that indexical there, that changes everything for me. That's all that's needed. And I'm thinking in my life, that opportunity is always there in any dialogue. I mean, not just these. So it's not that I'm thinking, if we are doing a practice that could help our world, our tragic world, it's already here. Everything is already here. But if we develop the capacity to point and recognize, and maybe others can know too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is it fair to say it's already here, but in that moment of pointing, it became there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. When you said, not just here, but in all my relationships, I throughout this whole conversation, different people and parts of my life have been entering in and taking a dip in this, and too. So I really appreciated you saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything mysterious? Still mysterious for you?
Mm. There's something mysterious to me about the moment. Why now? It keeps coming up. Why now? What's actually happening here? That this is personally for me, why now in my life? At this late stage of my life, why, at this late stage of the world, of our culture, at this. Why now? Why now?
What do you think by now?
I think what Guy was talking about, the level of complexity, the level of the way in which the propositional mind has just gotten itself into such a tangle of complexity, and coming to realize that more propositions will not get it out of this complexity, that this complete tangle that we've gotten ourselves into is finally creating conditions for an opening to maybe happen. How did? Yeah. I mean, this not knowing makes her wonder and leads her to eager pursuit. But in a sense, the soul is shining through this complete tangle of complexity. Finally. Maybe. I don't know.
The soul is shining through that complexity.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know, but it's certainly, I mean, in no other time that,
Could you could you expand on that point in our personal lives? Because it can also happen that when we come closer to death, or when we face an existential problem, then I think we also pressed into that entanglement where our reasoning capacity just loses itself.
Yeah, and I think as we were touching on that before, the stages of life are such that, we come up against some complexity and some teenage, angst and stuff. And then, okay, we find a solution. We either drop out and do drugs, or we, do a career and, and just get on the treadmill in some way. And then, get ourselves into all the obligations and all this stuff. I mean, there are stages of life where it's natural that there are a number of ways in which we can handle this existential, problem. But it's always there. And then, well, I suppose because I have personally been acutely aware of not just my own individual life, but the way in which the planet is headed towards what I have always considered to be disaster, always considered. And now, that's becoming more apparent. It's sort of like not just in my personal life, but it's almost like as a civilization, we've gone through our stages, and we're coming to the end stages of our civilization, to the final years of our civilization and of our whole ecosystem and everything. It's almost like that's happening on a grand scale. Depleting resources, all that stuff. I mean, we feel like we're in the late stages, and maybe that's when all of our science, all of our of our technology, it's not going to save us. And so then maybe we're in such a state of not knowing that we're able to start going into, what does he put it? Middle of the night. We're in the middle of the night.
So the desperate state of when you ask why now, you were kind of going personal level, what we're doing here,
Yeah.
but also kind of where we are in terms of civilization. What is there anything that all of the three have in common?
All of the three levels of existence, you mean?
Yeah, yes, all the three levels you were alluding to when you were talking about this why now.
Oh,
Is there anything you can think of that they have in common?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of developmental stages of life, you know, the life of humanity on this planet, and reflecting my personal stage of life. Now, I'm not sure if you know, if a person who is much younger than me would see it that way. Maybe they don't. And maybe, you know,
most of them I don't.
Yeah. No, I don't get that either. Yeah. So it might just be that the way, it might just be my own perspective. No.
Daniel, could I ask a question?
Sure.
How do you feel about dying?
I have mortality relatively close. I think about
I was asking Sandra.
Sorry.
Oh, to me? You're asking me, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, how do I feel about dying?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were at one of the things that was
Late
poignant,
stages, yeah.
right? You're at this stage of your life.
Yeah.
And there was this silence that you sat in.
Yeah.
That felt like it said so much. That long silence that you were in. I love sharing it with you. And then when you said at this stage of my life, it felt like that silence felt really connected to me. So I feel moved. I don't know if that's the right question of like how you feel about death, or what is it? What is the stage of your life?
I don't see it as you know, imminent for me.
Yeah. Being you have what you're probably at the like midway point of your life.
Oh no, way past midway. Oh, way past midway. You know, I mean,
fourth quarter.
7/8. Yeah, and I mean, you know, just now I'm in the process of probably buying a house that will accommodate me if I lose mobility. And well, I've never given serious consideration to that. Not immediate consideration. It's been theoretical. Yeah, theoretically, maybe I will, but not yet. And I'm still quite mobile, but you know, I mean, one does that at the end stages. So how do I feel about death itself? A very, very, very curious, very curious. And also there's really a wonderful, strong, when I said to you, Guy, that the pointing of the finger, right this, what is this? That's always available, no matter what the conditions are. What is this? And I only hope that I can continue to do that until I can't do that anymore, that kind of thing. So, and I also just feel it's just, as they say, part of life and all that stuff. It's sort of like, it's just really going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be really interesting. And a challenge to keep, to keep all the stuff that I have learned, that I have been lucky enough to learn in my life now, to carry that into my experience of the very last stage of my life.
Could I just say something I noticed is really like in the last 5 minutes, the attunement shifted from kind of desperation about the state of our civilization to kind of curiosity about death. And I thought that was really interesting to see how
noticed it.
Yeah.
Because both is hyper complex. Death usually shadows all of our categories that we have. Because non-existence is just beyond imagination. But that was just something I really thought was very interesting.
I remember a few years ago I was talking about it, and this is, before sort of people were really getting that we're in serious trouble here. And I would be telling my friends that, you don't have, what can't you, don't you see it? And then one day I realized, wow, I'm going to die. And then I won't have to worry about this anymore. And it was sort of like, that's great. I will actually experience a time when I don't have to actually carry all this on my shoulders anymore. And that was a big relief. But it wasn't the same as how I feel about it now, as how I've been talking about it. There wasn't that. I don't feel a sense of, I get a ticket out of this place. Meantime, you poor suckers are left behind to deal with it, Yeah, I don't have that feeling. I have more of a feeling of I'm part of everything. I'm not the lucky one that got out of jail free.
Does that difference in attunement perhaps reveal something about the faith as we were talking about it?
Yeah, because that has been very much a late development. Very much a late. If the faith in the way that we have been talking about it. Yeah. This has been such a gift.
That's what I heard in your silence. It's been such a gift.
Such a gift.
Yeah, the gift character of all of this.
It's sort of like, what did I do? Why now? What did I ever do to be gifted in this way,
I hear that all the way down to your toes.
Really. What did we ever do to be gifted in this way? What did we as human beings ever do to be gifted in this way, right? All of us. All of us. Just overwhelming. What did we ever do?
The line from that Eckhart thing that Guy sent us is reverberating on my head. That wonder that was so strong in that one passage.
Wonders here.
Yeah.
Gift
So
here.
you Sandra, I don't know, you even enacted this kind of going from desperation to wonder in that how you were talking just in the last 10 minutes. Because I think of the wonder is the attunement of that participatory faith. It ultimately, that inexhaustibility of shunyat draws out the kind of nihilism of despair.
And gratitude, not only wonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel love.
Yeah. Deep gratitude and love and wonder and just, wow. Oh. Did I tell you that's what my mother said 2 days after she died? She just said, wow. I heard her. She was dead. She'd been dead for 2 days. And I was in the Walmart. I checked out my little thing of organic potatoes that I bought at the Walmart, and I heard my mother go, wow, like that. It was her, all right. Yeah, I felt everything. Yeah.
So as we're getting closer to what we noticed was here, I noticed it seems it has the character of disclosing us, like disclosing us, right?
Yeah. Opening us.
And I'm really just present to this very, very generative silence. That's like, actually, as I'm talking, it's not the kind that goes away.
Yeah. Stays.
I would actually like to propose that we just sit for 5 minutes or so, just in sheer silence.
We never had our sit. That's right. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Do it.
Great.
Begin.
Mm.
Thank you.
Guy, I noticed that there's coming up for me is something about like the being on YouTube, this being on YouTube. And it's kind of like it's been there. I've thought about it, of course, but I haven't, I haven't really known kind of how I feel about it. But I'm aware that this goes up to YouTube, and I'm just kind of like aware of that. And I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure if I don't think it's causing a performative aspect to come into my thing, like I don't feel that way. I think I would know if it were.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sort of wondering, like, who watches this? If there's people who watch it,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'd like to know who they are. I'd like to have, a conversation with them. I'd like them to be in the room, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'd love that, actually.
Mm.
So I guess I'm aware of.
Sounds like you just made an invitation.
Oh, is it possible that there might be?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Really?
Yeah, the guy that contacted me that I was telling you about.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah.
I just love that.
I'll invite him. I can invite him to the next one.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, because I'm not a performer. I'm not doing this for the performance. And you just
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Wonderful.
All right, you guys, I gotta go.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Love us and leave us, right?
Yes.
Okay.